Had to run for my son, so didn't get a chance to get dressed, so.
Hey, everybody, Steve Ward, I'm online.
I'm the new
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Cammy.
Cammy, good to meet you.
Member. Yeah. Good to meet you.
Well, welcome.
Thank
What
you.
day are we? 13th, okay. Just trying to think, I was just thinking, no, we did, yeah, you turned it around pretty quick because we just approved the vote last Monday, so.
Yeah, they're like, come to the meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I said, all right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Say the 13th. It's tomorrow Valentine's Day.
It is.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
You already know what that means.
I got a daughter and a wife.
Yeah.
My wife's out of the country, but she got me something and left it as a surprise before she left. So I'm like, well, what am I supposed to send something to Italy now, you know?
I think that's her gift, is she's in Italy. Is that not it?
How many do we have? 5? 2,
3.
I'm counting. We need 6, right?
6.
Oh, is Peter Illigan?
No, Peter's online.
I see him on there, but he's not in the room.
He's not in the room.
Okay.
He's out of town.
No, good evening. I'm actually in Austin, Texas right now. I'm at the winter meeting for the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. That's the national organization I just became a board member of this past November. And plus we actually they have an annual awards banquet tomorrow and we won an award. So I'm here for board meeting and pick up the award.
Wow. And you're in Austin.
And I'm in Austin, which isn't a bad place to be.
No.
Watch out, 6th Street. Here comes Peter.
Right.
Hey, everybody, Steve Ward, can you hear me?
Yes,
For some
Steve, we
reason-
can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I can't activate my camera for some reason. I don't know if that's an option.
I usually have to remove the tape that's over the lens. Are we, I believe we're still 1 shy. Can I get a double check on that? All right, hey, Steve.
See you now, Steve.
All right.
Oh, Steve's on there. Okay. Nobody's out there.
Uh-oh.
I know Ty will not make it.
Okay.
So Caitlin.
Steve, can you ping Rita? By phone, see if we can get her on.
Yeah, I'll check in with her.
That'll get us to 6.
Am I right that 6 is, I was thinking 6 is the magic number. But I,
That's correct. That's right,
Okay.
Sarah, right?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
dang.
If we need to, we do have an informational item. We could flip the agenda to start with that and hopefully someone else comes in for the action items. That's an option too if it starts to go too many minutes.
Sounds good to me.
I was thinking that we even got nervous about doing informational items. Are we in the clear on that? I like that suggestion. I thought someone told me we can't do that anymore.
Vicky, do you know?
If it's just an informational item, you wouldn't be voting.
Right.
Okay,
Right?
Mhm.
that's what I thought. Okay, perfect. Let's give Steve and Rita just a second and then we'll kick over to that.
Sarah, did we get other board members that notified they wouldn't be able to make it?
No, just Ty notified us.
Okay.
I texted her. She did not answer her phone.
Caitlin. Oh, Caitlin's, okay, we're good. Caitlin's jumping on.
Oh, great.
Perfect.
Marjan. Yeah, Marjan, okay. All right, I think we're good.
Right. Thank you. All right. Seeing we have a quorum, I will now call the meeting to order. And can I start? June, will you take roll for us?
Yes. Board Member Mirsky. Board Member Freeman.
Here.
Board Member Johle.
Present?
Board Member Mercier.
Present.
Board Member Ridley.
Present.
Council Member Russell.
Present.
Council Member Ward.
Here.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
Vice Chair Hampden. Chair Moore.
Present. Thank you. Next order of business is to welcome our newest board member, Cammie Johle. Cammie, welcome. Glad to have you here, and I hope you enjoy your time with us, and you'll find it's quite a bit of interesting information that we deal with. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Next item is approval of the minutes from the January 9th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. Any comments, corrections, further edits? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I'm not aware that we have anyone for the public forum, but let me check with June or Sarah.
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Then a heads up to the board, we've got a rather full agenda, potentially full agenda tonight, but most of it we have saved for the last two items, so you won't be overly motivated to talk about it. Just kidding. But the last two will be a little meaty, so we're gonna try to nail the easy stuff early, starting with agenda item 6A, and I will turn that over to Adam.
All right, my name is Adam Marquez. I'm a Utilities Engineering Supervisor, and this item is the Clarkson and Hampden Booster Pump Station Improvements Construction Project. So a little bit of background, the Clarkson and Hampden Booster Pump Station currently it exists. It's a below grade vault with two pumps on the corner of East Hampden Avenue and South Clarkson Street. It boosts water pressure to the northeast corner of our city from our zone 1 pressure system to our zone 3 pressure system. It has obsolete electrical and controls equipment and aging pumps. They're highly corroded and at the end of their useful life. So the scope of work for this project is to demolish and replace all pumps and piping. It will be an in-kind replacement of the pumps and piping. We will add new flow and pressure meters. We will move our electrical and controls above grade to meet modern electrical safety standards. We will provide new HVAC and plumbing in the vault. While the booster pump station is being constructed, we will do bypass pumping at our Cornell and Penn pump station, which is another pump station in our system that is not operational, but it served the same purpose to boost pressure from zone 1 to zone 3. So in addition, we'll have new redundancies to provide backup power to the CNH pump station with a generator. And we will have emergency pump connection capabilities at the Cornell and Penn pump station location. So when they go to hook up temporary bypass pumping at Cornell and Penn, they'll leave the infrastructure in place for a future potential emergency backup scenario where we may need to provide a temporary pump at that location. So the selection process for this contract, we issued a request for proposal in October of 2023. That was a qualification-based selection. These were the four contractors who bid on the project, and ultimately we selected JR Freelance. They were experienced and qualified for this type of project. They provided the most complete proposal and the most competitive price and schedule for the completeness of the proposal. So, you see Dino Electric sort of sticks out there. I would say that we evaluated that as an incomplete proposal. So we're doing a contract for construction. The after intent to award, we discovered that we needed a new variable frequency drive. That's what controls the speed of the pumps. And so our base bid was adjusted from the 1.526 to the 1.583 to accommodate that additional piece of equipment. There's some long lead items. So if we give notice to proceed this month, they begin procurement, and then we would look to actually do construction in the third quarter of this year. So our total contract amount is the 1.583, requesting a staff managed contingency of 10%. So our total project authorization would be 1.74. And then in addition to that, we are bringing a contract for services during construction. This would be with Hazen and Sawyer. They would provide schedule review, review the technical submittals for electrical and mechanical equipment, and review requests for information from the contractor. They'd support startup and commissioning, and then make sure we have accurate record drawings at the end of the project. So they were selected because they did the design. This design was part of the old Hampden utility improvements design package. We've broken out the pump station because the pump station will be fully WIFIA funded versus the old Hampden project will not. And so we wanted to break this one out for construction to make the financial tracking simpler. And so the contract with Hazen and Sawyer would be $133,000, requesting 10% contingency for a total authorization of $146,000. Any questions?
I guess I got a quick question. Since the backup is on Cornell and Penn, I know Excel was doing a lot of work there as well. There's no concerns about any type of, I guess, just them touching what they shouldn't have touched. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have seen that work. I think we expect it to be complete by the time we're out there and needing to use it. But that's something that we'll work with the contractor and make sure is coordinated.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Any further questions for Adam? Okay. Then can I get a motion? Wait till it comes up. All right, can I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve by motion Water and Sewer Board agenda items? It's actually 6A, 1 and 2. We slipped an extra one in there. So 6A, 1 and 6A, 2 as written.
I move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? All right. There's a hand waving on the screen, but I think that's just Sarah's mouse. So I think we're good. All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
John, I
I
have
trust
a-
there was, pardon?
I have a quick question. Is Cammie allowed to vote right now?
Am I supposed to be voting?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
yes, if
Didn't
you
know
are,
we had the number. Okay.
Oh, you're in.
Well, as an alternate.
Oh,
So
but we don't have
know-
enough, yeah,
I
but we
know
don't-
I didn't know what the count
Oh,
was.
okay.
I can't tell how many people are online.
I think we're.
I think we're good, yeah.
Okay,
regardless.
okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
We're
great,
missing
thank you.
I don't want to get in trouble on my first day.
Very good. Okay, let's do that again. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 That sounded like more volume. Good. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 6B. And Zachary. Zach.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Zach Halabassi. I'm the operations manager at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. And I want to present to you on acquiring an ozone trailer. So quick background on the taste and odor issue with Englewood Water. This is basically due to naturally occurring compounds, organic compounds in the water, mainly geosmin and MIB. There are other compounds, but these are typically the two that stand out and contribute mostly to taste and odor. These tend to increase in levels during the summer and fall. And one thing we've done, we went about a year ago, we profiled all of our source water, whether it's coming from the Platte or City Ditch or the North Reservoir, as you see on the slide. The Platte comes from west to east into the plant. North Reservoir, there is an outlet valve that we open depending on if we want water from the North Reservoir or not. And then City Ditch goes into the North Reservoir and comes out of that same outlet into the plant. So, we can blend the raw water depending on elevation and seasons. One thing we discovered when we profiled those sources is most of our taste and odor compounds are coming from the South Reservoir. That's the one with the kind of the greenish color to it. And you see the arrow that points to a decant. So that's the reservoir where we store all the sludge and backwash water that we produce from the treatment process. We pump all that into the South Reservoir. And as a result, we've had several years of accumulation of sludge and a lot of those taste and odor causing compounds. So as you can imagine, the decant carries a lot of those organic compounds and goes back to the North Reservoir. So essentially we are kind of reseeding, if you will, the North Reservoir with these organic compounds, which make their way into the treatment process and eventually cause taste and odor in the water going out to our customers. One of the technologies that are proven to be very effective against those compounds is ozone. Ozone is a very strong oxidant with very minimal byproducts or side effects, if you will. It's a very clean chemical to use. And ozone, instead of having 2 oxygen atoms, it has 3. So that's where it gets its efficiency as far as oxidation. And there's been a lot of research, a lot of utilities that use ozone for oxidation and even for taste and odor. One thing we did last year is last year we got a demonstration ozone trailer that we brought on site and fed ozone in the decant stream. So we did not treat the entire source water. We just treated where those MIB or the taste and odor compounds exist and concentrate in that decant stream. And that produced really excellent results. We basically dropped those to almost below detect levels. It also reduced our usage of other chemicals like chlorine and potassium, sodium permanganate. It really had a huge impact on the quality of the water and the process in general. So that's why we're kind of pursuing ozone as a permanent installation by acquiring a trailer with an ozone setup in it to feed it continuously in that decant stream, and hopefully minimize, if not eliminate, the taste and odor issue that we experience from that decant stream. So the proposed work basically is we talk to the contractor. This is not a typical installation. Most ozone installations come on a full scale that require ozone contactor, ozone generator, a significant improvement to the power grid because they consume so much power. However, in our case, we are not going to treat, again, the entire volume. We're just going to attack the problem where it exists in that decant, which is a much smaller stream, and keep the need for ozone to a minimum, if you will, and the installation to a smaller scale and much more manageable cost, if you will. So the idea, again, is to work with a vendor that specializes in building those trailers, and the same vendor who provided us with the demonstration unit. They're going to fabricate it, deliver it to us. Then we're going to go, before that, we're going to go through the approval process with the state and get that permitted by them, install it, do staff training, work with them on the warranty services, which includes 1 year of maintenance services as well. So the schedule, again, get permit submittal by March of this year to CDPHE, get their approval, install and start up around June of this year, do continuous training and water quality monitoring. And let's see, the contractor is Iron Woman. Again, they specialize in these buildups and assemblies. They are already a current on-call contractor. And let's see, recommended by the ozone trailer manufacturer as local representative. So we've reached out to several ozone manufacturers, and they actually, one of them recommended Iron Woman. They work with them closely, and they provide them with all the equipment needed to set up the trailer. Let's see. So again, and the trailer also gives us flexibility that in the future, if we find out that we have solved the problem in the South Reservoir, we want to move it to the North Reservoir or another location, it has the mobility to be relocated somewhere else. And again, the intent is to treat the problem where it exists, keep the cost as low as possible, and installation and construction to a minimum. I'm happy to answer any questions.
You don't see any need for this to be bigger scale in the future?
I don't think so, because again, we did a lot of profiling of our water source. The plat seems to be clean of those compounds. City ditch is clean as well. North Reservoir has high elevations, not as high as the South Reservoir, but we suspect, almost sure, that a lot of it was contamination from that decant going into the North Reservoir for years and years at a time. So we're hoping that once we cut off, if you will, that supply, that at some point, even the water quality in those compounds levels will drop in the North Reservoir as well.
Okay.
Are we still dredging the South Pond?
We have dredged a couple of times. Right now, we're in the process of acquiring a centrifuge so we can do the dewatering ourselves. So that's at least the goal moving forward.
And so is the sludge that's in there that we're dredging also creating part of the problem?
Yes, that's basically where it starts. So we're taking all that sludge that has organic compounds that could cause taste and odor concentrated in the reservoir. We're taking the decant that has high elevations. The dredging will definitely help. The ozone will also help as well with the decant.
Okay, thank you.
And Zach, I'm sorry, I missed, how does it actually impact the water? How is this trailer actually touching and affecting the water?
Good question. So the trailer basically is going to be installed very close to that decant structure. So the trailer is going to pull water from the South Reservoir, send it into the ozone contactor. So we're going to feed a large dose of ozone in that little water that we pull in, which is about 100, 150 gallons per minute. And then that ozonated water is gonna go back in the same stream, the decant, and basically dose the rest of the flow. So that 150 gallons per minute is gonna be dosed heavily with ozone. That's gonna go into probably another 200, 300, 400,000 gallons of water that flow from the decant into the North Reservoir. So again, we need a little bit of water to inject that ozone in, but that water stream is gonna go back into the decant and add that dose to the entire stream.
Thank you. I was missing how, I was like, how are we getting, that's really helpful. I couldn't figure out how the trailer was handling all the water needs, so that's good.
You probably can inject ozone in the water. It's just not as effective going in as a gas. It's much more effective to dissolve it into water and create an ozone solution, if you will, before you put it back in water.
Can I ask a question, Zach? So I assume that timing is a factor in this process. Because how does that ozonated oxygen affects the growth of fungi? Or I understand the good bacteria would be helpful, but how do you control the fungi growth?
So basically what we want to control is the products of the fungi and products of the sludge, which are those organics, or if you will, the toxins that come out of algae and fungi. So by oxidizing those compounds, we're kind of diminishing the impact of them, which is obviously taste and odor. So the intent is not necessarily to impact the aquatic life, whatever it may be, but the products of that biological activity, which is those harmful compounds.
I understand the intent is not that. I'm saying that, have you seen the actual data that shows how the outcome of that is? Because I would imagine that as this water, I guess I can see the value, like as the water get ozonated and then it just gets used, that really helps too. But if it's getting, there is a time lapse that those ozonated water actually does promote the growth of fungi. I mean, it helps with the good bacteria, but also, so I want to see what kind of data this company showed you on that process of
There's a lot of research on ozone. The half-life of ozone is incredibly short.
Yes, I'm familiar with it. I actually have an ozonated machine myself. I'm very familiar.
So ozone is not going to stay in the water for very long. And that was, again, one of the motives that we chose that side stream in particular, because it's going to end up in the North Reservoir and it's going to gas off after it does its oxidation. It's going to gas off to the atmosphere. So very, very little of it is going to stay in the water and come into the facility itself.
So I understand in that reservoir, there is a mechanism that circulates the water. Am I correct? Because I think one of the times I came in and you guys explained to me, which was extremely helpful. So what I want to see is that what I fail to recognize is that, okay, so you get this percentage of the water get ozonated. Now it's going to enter the reservoir. Now you got the time factor plus the volume factor involved in that process. Then depending on what is the microbiome that's growing in that reservoir, then you got to have some sort of educated that the factor comes in how much this ozonated machine is going to cost, one. Two, how does that percentage of is helpful that by the time it gets to the consumers, how it affects them. So to me is like, well, what kind of a data you have with that?
Let me jump in on this. So I think what we did is we're trying to attack taste and odor from every angle that we can think of. So one of it is we're pulling the sludge out, we're dredging, we're gonna pull the solids out of the reservoir. This was another technology that we looked at. We piloted it last summer. And we did pilot testing that showed that it was pulling these compounds out of the water that were creating the taste and odor issues. That water is essentially going from the South Reservoir to the North Reservoir. From the North Reservoir, it goes through the entire treatment process. So it's raw water. It does, by the time it goes through the entire treatment process, any effect of the ozone is completely dissipated and gone before it ever gets to the distribution system. So this is trying to knock it down at its source water so that it doesn't carry through the entire treatment process. And the reason we went with a trailer is so that we can we can move it, we can use it seasonally. We're not investing millions of dollars in a permanent facility. It's something that we can utilize during the period of time that we're dredging. And then we may reutilize it differently in the future based on how taste and odor, if we can continue to have taste and odor issues. So the $300,000 is a really cost-effective way to get a big bang for the buck in terms of knocking down the compounds that are causing this issue.
Thank you so much for reading my mind, because that's exactly what I was thinking, is that if you were spending that $300,000 for removing the sludge, which is the cause of the contamination, would that be a more effective way to actually control the cause of contamination without like, if it's going to help to remove 50% of the contaminants versus just add another 5% to the overgrowth of the thing is of the growth of microbiome. So then how effective is that? And then when you're making that decision, what is that decision based of? I mean, where does it come from? Is there some sort of a data somewhere that actually?
Yeah, so the sludge is the first part. So that's why we're buying the centrifuge and putting in the centrifuge, and we're gonna clear out that south reservoir. At the same time, we're clearing out the south reservoir. That's gonna take, that could take upwards of 5 years to get that completely cleared out. And so in the meantime, we don't want to wait 5 more years before we mitigate the impacts of that sludge on taste and odor. So that's where the ozone trailer comes in as a flexible option to couple with the dredging to improve the water that's going into the north reservoir that we are sure is causing part of this problem. Then fast forward 5 years and we've got the south reservoir dredged out. We're now in the north reservoir. Well, the north reservoir still experiences summertime spikes in these types of compounds. And so that's where we can then move this trailer, because it's not a fixed building, and we can put it into a different part of the system to knock down these compounds that are naturally occurring during the summer anyways in a different way. So it gives this trailer option gives us all kinds of flexibility to inject this treatment process in the source water where we think it's the right point in the source water, and that will evolve over time as we dredge the south reservoir.
And here, do I understand this correctly, that one of your problems is to remove the sludge is the removal of that and dispersing it in a proper place as far as like what's allowed to where they unload this sludge?
The sludge gets hauled off and is sent to a non-hazardous waste landfill. That's where it goes right now. But down the road, we're hoping that it stays non-hazardous, but we have to test every year to ensure that.
So do you have like a limitation there?
We have limits that we have to, the landfills have limits of what we can dispose of, and we test that annually. Right now, we're under those limits, so we can dispose at a non-hazardous landfill. If we go above those limits, then we end up needing to go to a hazardous landfill, which is more expensive. So right now we're in a good state, which is why we want to crank out as much of that sludge as possible.
Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it.
I may add just one more point, that even when we clean the south reservoir of all the sludge, we're going to continue to use the south reservoir for the sludge that we produce in the process. So the taste and odor compounds are not going to disappear once the sludge is gone, because we're going to put fresh sludge in there. The levels of those compounds will be significantly lower, but we'll always have, because we are removing those compounds in the process, but eventually they make their way back through the sludge back into the south reservoir. So I see the ozone trailer being used for probably an extended period of time, maybe not as high of a dose as we get rid of more and more of that sludge that's been there for years.
I also think is the cost of his 300,000 is a reasonable cost for the solution it provides. Thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate you explaining it.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Great. Can I get a motion to approve agenda item 6B as written?
I move the motion.
Thank you, Marjan. A second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. On to item 6C.
All right.
Back to Adam.
It's me again. I'm presenting this one. This item is the space improvements phase 2 final design. So a little bit of project background. We have already kicked off phase 1 of our space improvements at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. We also need future improvements at the service center. During phase 1, we competitively selected Eidos Architects for design and PCL Construction for CMGC delivery. So as I mentioned, phase 1 construction is just now beginning this week, actually, and hoping for completion in the fall of this year. And then phase 2 design is underway with Eidos, where we kicked off preliminary concept designs late last year, November, December timeframe. So we're looking to complete construction next year, both at the Allen Water Treatment Plant and the service center. So project goals at the Allen Water Treatment Plant, we want to remove our reliance on leased trailers. So we have a double wide trailer that houses our engineering staff and some of our O&M management staff. And then we've got the single wide trailer that houses our environmental compliance staff. Currently, we would like to get rid of both of those trailers with the space improvements project. And so in total, we'd house approximately 20 people at the Allen Water Treatment Plant. We will also have additional meeting space and some site security and site civil improvements so that we have better access control at the plant and so that we have improved kind of facades to our existing building, as the plant was pretty old. The service center, we are looking to remove reliance on leased trailers there as well and house our distribution and collection staff. Again, that's about another 20 people who we're looking to permanently house. We'd like to create additional meeting space there and have improved storage capacity and kind of vehicle access. So here's a look at the scope of work. The top diagram, these are pretty preliminary concepts, but essentially we'd have a new freestanding building, and then we do site improvements to parking, pavement, and our exterior finishes. At the service center, we'd be tying in a new prefabricated metal building to the existing service building, so kind of a simple expansion there. And then, kind of like a connection piece in between the prefab building and the existing building. And we'd also make improvements to the site drainage and parking there as well. So our contract summary. So Eidos was competitively selected, as I mentioned, in 2021 to do the facilities master plan. That sort of evolved, as I think Peter's explained in past meetings, to these phased office projects. The Eidos designed phase 1 and they've completed the phase 2 concept study. And so we're just going to build upon those concepts and take this to final design. So the cost for design is, as you can see below, so total, Eidos's total contract amount would be $323,000. We're requesting a staff managed contingency for a total project authorization of $355,000. Any questions?
Adam, I had a question. So I was glad to hear, I heard a little bit about site security. So access control, security of the building, all that's going to be added to the design. What about sustainability, energy efficiency? Is that all part of the city's building code, or?
We still have to meet on to make some of those decisions around our energy efficiency, but yes, we want to align.
It'll be part of this design, this final phase though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And, yeah, we have talked about having, parking spots for electric vehicles, but also looking at, what type of heating source do we want?
Maybe solar,
Perhaps.
perhaps?
We really haven't had those discussions yet, to my knowledge, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any additional questions? All right. Can I get a motion to, sorry, recommend the city council approve by motion item 6C as written?
I move.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Sarah, June, did we get that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. And opposed? All right, motion carries. I'm moving on to 6D. I think Josh has taken the mic.
Good evening, Water Sewer Board. I'm the Utilities Deputy Director of Operations and Maintenance, Josh Roach. I'll be presenting tonight, shouldn't take long, but on utility locates and marking services. Essentially, every time anybody in the city of Inglewood has to excavate or dig, they have to call us or someone like us to go out to respond to those digs, to make sure everything that is underground is identified on the ground and marked. That is something that we used to do in-house, but as you could imagine, we get 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 calls a year to do that. That took a lot of our staff and resources, and we did that for years and years and years. We did a good job at it, but that's kind of what we did every day. Every day we'd come to work, and that was what we had to have done. So when that has to be done, you don't do a lot of other things. So we changed that. We also are required to do this by law. This isn't something that we have any option to do. Go to the next slide there. So again, the scope of the work here is when there's a call, we go out and we have to mark the water, the sewers, the ditch, stormwater lines, as is required by state statute. Also, this is required of us all the time, 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter what day it is, we have to respond to these calls. So again, as you can imagine, that takes a lot of time and resources and staffing. 2023 annual volume, 10,000 routine locate requests. I was actually under in my assessment of what I thought it was. 10,000 routine locate requests. Of those 10,550 were emergency locate. That means everybody stop what you're doing, no matter what time of day, what weekend, what holiday it is, and have staff respond to that, which gets pretty expensive as well. So up for renewal is this contract with USIC, the same contract we've had the past 2 years, 2 years. They've been great. It's worked well for us. So essentially, we don't participate in this process at all anymore. There's a call comes in, they go out and they do this work for us, and it goes well. Since USIC has been doing this work, obviously we have 8, 9, 10,000 calls a year. I think we've had 2 or 3 things hit, which is a remarkable number if you think about all those calls. Bringing forward to you opportunity for this contract to be renewed. We're still the total contract amount for $200,000 is a 15% staff managed contingency for a total project authorization of $230,000, which if you do the math on that, turns out to be about $20 a locate. So it sounds expensive until you realize the amount of requests that we get, and you realize it's not terribly expensive for us to do this. So, fine. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Doesn't sound like we have any. All right, no questions. I get a motion to recommend the city council approve by motion item 6D as written.
So moved. Second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. That'll take us to item 6E, lead reduction program. And Sarah?
All right, good evening, everyone. So I'm here to present the phase 2 code changes for the lead reduction program. These are follow on from what the code changes we made last fall for field investigation as we began the program. I'll just also mention Steve Price with Hazen and Sawyer is on the line as well. Hazen and Sawyer is our program manager. We contracted with them back in March of 2023. So I'll go through the schedule, give you some updates on our inventory, and then we'll talk about the code changes. So first kickoff of the program was back in 2023 when we hired Hazen. We did an initial service line inventory development that was completed in August 2023. That was used to plan our field verification. That was the potholing and that was conducted last fall, and that completed in November last year. We applied for the SRF loan in December of 2023. Our loan application is going through the process with SRF currently. We are anticipating consideration from the state in March, and we'll know what that funding level will be. We, just as a reminder, we applied for 40 million with anticipation of getting 10 million of that as principal forgiveness. In January of this year, our RFP for a lead line replacement contractor was posted. Proposals for that RFP are due back at the end of this month. And then the next step is for us to present these code changes that you're seeing tonight to City Council. We have a study session scheduled for next Monday, and then we would take for first and second reading in March of this year. We anticipate bringing back in April then the contract with the one or multiple contractors to start lead line replacement this year and anticipate construction beginning in May. So update for our lead service line inventory. The table you see here shows the percentage and how it changed from the preliminary inventory to the updated inventory. So the lead or assumed lead was about 37% of service lines under that preliminary inventory. Now we're down to 19. So it's great news as we went through the field verification. We'll walk through a little bit more detail on the numbers. So on the left, you can see a lot of green. That used to be a lot of red. So we were happy to see that the lead or assumed lead line count is about 22 or 2,300. There are, through the machine learning, we allow for unknowns to be quantified as well. So we're including about 700 in that count as well to say that our lead inventory is up to 3,000 lines. In the master plan, it was assumed that there were up to 8,000 lines. So the fact that we're now assumed 3,000 lines is great news. Hazen has worked to break up the city into different construction zones. So there'll be 10 construction zones that we work through in the coming years to replace lead service lines. You can see that 2024 is in the north central zone. I have a blue color there. That is the zone we will target for this year. So that's bordered on the north by Yale, on the south, Hampden, and then Broadway and Downing on the east-west borders. There's about 650 either lead, assumed lead, or unknown lines in this area, and we think that we can address each of those lines this year. What we will also be doing is potholing or field verification for the 705 assumed non-lead that were built before 1960. So that the state has provided guidance that they'd like to understand, pre-1960, what those service line materials are. Through our potholing and machine learning, we got to a certain number, but we will go through and verify that all of these are copper and not lead. So the objectives through our lead line replacement is to complete construction and remove all lead service lines or galvanized service lines by 2027. We will have an extensive customer outreach program. Our plan is to bring that to this board and city council in April, just to let you know what our outreach plan is through the rest of the year. And then we will also be continuing to collect field data that will continue to inform our inventory moving forward. Our plan is to ramp up replacements over the next several years. So starting with 650 this year, 1,000 in 2025, and then the remainder in 2026. The proposed code amendments that are in your packet tonight. So there's several bullets here, and I'll kind of give you some details on each one. So the first is we really define what the lead reduction program is. We identify that the purpose of the program is to replace all lead and galvanized service lines within the Inglewood water service area. We also establish the financial conditions by which the project will be, or the program will be conducted. So the program is intended to cover all costs and replace the utility-owned and customer-owned service lines as long as funding is available, and we would annually appropriate that amount during the budget process. We would also establish requirements for all customers to move to metered water service. We still have about 10% of customers that are on a flat rate meter. So these proposed amendments would allow utilities to programmatically address the remaining flat rate customers. And then the final point here is the code changes would define the city and customer responsibilities regarding any lead service line replacements. So that would require a customer to acknowledge that utilities is going to come in and replace the lead or galvanized line. It also defines any penalties if there's violations to this program as it's dictated in code. And then that can include, those penalties can include a fine and ultimately water shutoff if we've given reasonable opportunity for the customer to respond and allow us to replace the line. There's also maintenance responsibilities that are defined in the proposed changes. Because we would be replacing a private line, we need to make sure that the customer then is aware that after that replacement is done, that they are then responsible for the maintenance of the line moving forward. So lead reduction programs are being initiated across the country, and many water providers such as Denver Water, St. Paul, Minnesota, Washington, D.C. have all implemented similar changes to these. That I know Peter wanted to just add a couple comments, and then we can take some questions.
Hey, Sarah. So I wanted to add some big picture comments on this as well. So this lead reduction and removal program that we've been working on for the past few years, it's something that we're actually working with the state on multiple different channels on this. So if you recall, we got designated a large utility, which means we had to do what's called an optimal corrosion control study. We did that study. What that does is that ensures that whatever technology we implement is optimal for ensuring that we don't leach lead into the system. There's another aspect that we were doing in parallel to that, which was testing our own water system. We're unlike Denver in the sense that we've never had a lead hit. They had lead hits, which automatically triggered their accelerated program. We've never had a lead hit. Because of that, we've been able to go through this process of testing a number of facilities over 2 6-month periods to verify that we're still below the 5 micrograms per liter that enables us to be essentially deemed optimally corrosion controlled. And so what that does is that gives us a whole lot more flexibility in terms of how we implement this program, as opposed to the state coming in and saying, you will do it this way, you will do it in this timing. So we were running that approach in parallel to this. Well, it turns out we actually are close to potentially some good news on that that testing. Because and this is actually one of the situations where the hard water is actually kind of good, because it caused this calcification layer that protected the user from the lead service line and has helped to maintain that calcification layer. And so we think within the next couple weeks, we'll find out one way or another whether we have passed all those tests, which will then deem us optimally corrosion control, which then lengthens the time frame of which we can do this. We weren't expecting that, actually. That's really unexpected good news and gives us flexibility. It doesn't, from our perspective, what we would propose to the board and council is to not move off of our current plan. Our current plan, because we were ahead of the game on this, we ended up second in line for the infrastructure money, which is why we are able to secure $10 million of principal forgiveness. That's essentially free money. I think the next city that's in line behind us is Greeley. I know Aurora is working on trying to get some money, but we were second in line, so we got a huge chunk of free money because of it. So to do that, we have to also borrow some money through this SRF. And if you recall way back 4 years ago in 2020, when we looked at the funding of the lead program, it was funded at $1 million a year, and we weren't sure exactly how we were going to fund it. So we've been pushing forward all these different initiatives in parallel to figure out, do we have to do optimal corrosion control? What are we doing from an inventory perspective? What are we doing from an aggressive removal program? How are we optimizing all the work that Denver did? And then also looking at the funding. And so we believe we've gotten to a point where to get access to that $10 million of free money, we have what we would anticipate will be essentially a lead removal fee. And I think I've mentioned this a couple times over the last 6 months. That would be a modest amount. We're looking right now I think we're looking at starting it at $3 a month to fund this entire program. So keep in mind that 4 years ago, this was unfunded, and through the securing of the SRF loan and the infrastructure money, which has occurred in the meantime, by creating this small funding amount on the bill, it allows us to implement the program and capitalize on that money. So we're still working on that set of parameters as we bring all that to council this year to fully fund this approach to what we think is a strong, aggressive approach to removing lead from our system. The testing data now no longer makes that mandated, and it gives us more flexibility from a timing perspective. So we're looking at, right now we have it scheduled as a 3-year program. We're looking at what would happen if we lengthened it out another couple years to see if that reduces some of the rate pressure or some of that cost. Because really what happens is when we execute this program, it results in a debt service need, essentially, because we're using state revolving fund low interest loans. And so we just need to have the revenue to be able to debt serve. Ultimately, when you look at our water bill as a whole, even if we have an initial $3 fee on this, we are still $25 to $30 lower than the average in the front range. And we will still be the lowest of the comparisons that we've looked at, which are a lot of our neighbors. But I just wanted to express the good news that we might not be under the direct push of CDPHE or the direct requirements by CDPHE, and this becomes something that's in more of our control as we execute it. So just some more broader updates on the program and how we're implementing it and ensuring that we can get it all funded. Now I think we're ready for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Peter or Sarah?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Marjan.
Peter, when we were, if you could go back to those screen that it was showing the green dots versus the red dots, the 3,000 units versus 8,000 units. There. Great. Thank you so much. So when initially this was proposed, and you guys were under the impression that there would be 8,000 units that will have this need. Can you explain to me why there is such a big contrast in those numbers?
So when we initially were estimating this as part of the master plan, so the master plan, we were trying to assess all aspects of the utility, lead service line being one component of it. When we did that, we did a very high level estimate based on age of property. And so at a master planning level, you look to get an indicator of what the scope of the issue is without going into more study and more detail. And so the first phase, the range was 4,000 to 8,000. And that was because we were estimating it based on age of property. And so if you just go off a pre-1960 number of pre-1960 homes in the city, assume every one of them is lead, that's how we got that first number. So it's a very high level estimate. As we've been studying this and advancing this program over the last 3 years, we have drilled in with more detail and more resolution to truly understanding what is the scope of it. And that accounts for people who have replaced it in the past, maybe different construction methods that were used at the time. This is still an estimate. Ultimately, the program will look to verify any home pre-1960 as to whether it's lead or not lead. When I saw these numbers come in and they were at 2,300, I'm still a little bit surprised that they're that low. It was pleasantly surprised, but until we actually get the true verification home by home, service line by service line, we won't exactly know what the number is. Now, if it's post 1960, we are going to assume that those are all non-lead because that's what the data does show. However, we will offer to anybody in the service area who has, like, let's say they have a 1963 home and they want us to verify whether it's lead or not, we'll go out and do those on request.
Okay.
So that's how we ended up so different.
Thank you so much for explaining. I honestly, I have a really major problem with this presentation because we do have 2 city council members in here with part of the water board member. And I remember clearly that it was voted against the consumers' right. So then they were able to pass to go and through people's home without their consent because of the presentation of those numbers, that how much it had urgency, that we had to overcome people's right to make a decision on that and hear the true number. I really, really have a problem with that, Peter. I don't think it is right to present data differently to the different city council members, you know.
So,
and if
Marjan, we didn't have this data when we made that presentation last fall when we were doing that first round of code changes.
But I remember that part of the city council meeting, it was presented that how much it was important because there's so many people have the lead lines, and then that the right was taken away from them to consent to this or not. So now we have a more accurate number. And so my question is, why wasn't this question was brought up initially? That part of that data, that so the city council could make a better choice for the people, residents of Inglewood.
Because when we were bringing those code changes, it was to do the assessment. So we didn't know until we actually did the potholing project. So we potholed 370 homes, which then informed the data set that we came up with. So there was no way to know that. We couldn't have provided that information because we didn't have it at that time.
Thank you for explaining, but what I'm asking, how then we could have, that meeting could have been, that decision could have been delayed in the city council until you had a more proper and more accurate number.
What we were doing with that first, it was not delaying that. Because what that code change was doing was allowing us to verify. And that's what that first phase was. The second round of code changes is to actually remove. And so what we are doing, we're doing this incrementally step by step to be conscious of, I think exactly what you're concerned about is this potential overreach. Is we did the first step of this, which was expanding the definition so that we could go and verify inside the home. We subsequently found out from the state that we could also just verify outside. That was a change that occurred while we were bringing this to council. And so this next phase actually allows us to remove the line, which requires cutting it at the copper connection in the house and removing all the lead all the way out to the street. And so that ability to do that, to remove the lead from the system, whether it's 8,000, 3,000, 2,000, or 500, is still designed to remove the lead from the system. So the number itself doesn't impact whether we need to do it or not. It's a programmatic approach to removing lead from the system, whether it's 200 lines or 8,000 lines. So there's not a connection.
My question is not about the removal of lead. I'm just saying that if you have 10% or maybe 2% of the population that have that is a workable number that you can get their consent to enter their property and be able to get their consent with that. But that was overlooked, and that was overlooked by taking everybody's right with that consent. That's what I have a problem with.
It wasn't overlooked because we didn't know at that point in time. We had to do.
But
we had to do this next phase.
That could have been presented later. That could have been presented later once you had more accurate numbers. Am I correct with that or not?
No, because we needed the code change in order to establish the accurate numbers. That's what that code changes in the fall were for that potholing process. And so we needed that for the potholing process. It turned out we actually didn't even end up using it because the state changed their guidance as we were getting these changes approved. And so we did, if anybody refused, we just went on to another, house. And so we had a couple people that refused to have us even go on the property, which, to be clear, most of these systems are within that easement, that front easement space of a person's property. So we didn't push that issue, even though that's within the city's right because it's within the easement. So I think the concern that we did in overreach on this is it's really the fact that the numbers were so much less were actually a benefit because it impacted so few people anyways. And turns out we didn't actually end up using that provision because we wanted to be conscious of the council discussion. We wanted to be conscious of the customer.
So is that going to be overlooked again in the city council to remove that since it's not needed?
So the difference here is if someone's determined to have a lead service line, we want to remove the lead service line. So there's going to be a point in time where we will have to get to that house to remove the lead service line. That's different than the assessment from the fall, which is why the code changes are being proposed differently, because ultimately we want all the lead out of this system.
Right. I understand that. I agree with that. Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Steve, let's go. You go next.
Thanks, Chair. My question is, how is the conversion to a metered house from a flat rate house necessarily connected to lead reduction?
Not necessarily. Well, sorry. The way it's connected is because a lot of times those flat rate lines are also lead lines. So we wanted to address that piece of it. We wanted to make sure that was consistent as we're changing all the lead service lines. Ultimately, from a system perspective, and this has been a city This has been a city council goal for 12 or 15 years, is to get our system off of flat rate services. It's not a it's actually an unfair way to bill. Because if someone's using too much water, then all the rest of us are subsidizing that person's water and they're not paying their fair share. If someone is using too little water, then they're overpaying and subsidizing all the rest of us. The reason water systems are metered is to ensure that people are paying for what they're using. The fact that Englewood's system still has 10% unmetered, I think I said before, I was shocked by it because I thought all that went away in the 90s. But this is just one of those residuals that Englewood just has not converted over to full metered service. Meters are important to ensure that people are paying the proper amount.
I won't belabor the point, but I would prefer those two items come forward separately.
Look at it. I think we can go back and look at it. I would have to talk to Sarah to make sure that we're not going to miss something as it relates to the lead removal program. We want to have that. We want to have that connection at the time we're removing the lead service line, which is why it's coupled with this, because it's all about the service line at that point in time. But I understand your point.
Yeah, we can look at that and certainly discuss it next week as well.
Does that, I'm sorry, does that question mean we would need to defer the motion for tonight? Or is that element part of what's embedded in this?
I can move to amend, Chair, and we can see how that goes.
That's
If
what
the
I'm-
board wants to handle this tonight, we can forward it to council accordingly, but as a member of council, I will not vote yes on both of these together. That's just
What
my,
if we split them apart? So we still move forward with we had two items. One is the item of metered service, and one is the item of the lead removal program. And we present them as two different independent items, so that because we do want to carry them together, because I think once we start removing lead service lines that are flat rate, we want to have that ability to install a meter at that point in time.
This is great, guys. Let me table this for a second. Let me see what other discussion we may have. As I mentioned, that we saved the two biggest topics for last, and this is just one of them. Let me see if there's anybody wants to get on the say anything before we try to resolve this issue.
To me, makes sense also what Peter says, while you're actually there removing the lead line, it makes sense to just like move these people to metered. So I can see what his point.
Thank you. I think someone in the room was trying to speak.
John, Rita, I would like to
Yes.
weigh in. And I agree with Councilmember Ward on removing that. I do appreciate the fact, going back, I did vote no on allowing you all to go into people's house. I appreciate the fact that you didn't have to. However, in reading this packet, what I'm really concerned about is the huge overreach that is coming now. And I am very concerned that the people are not going to be happy about this. Are we actually, I know you can go into the house according to the legislation that you have put in here to cut the line off inside the house. What are you going to do about houses that actually have galvanized pipes in the house? Are we going to start dictating what we're going to do there?
So the way the program is intended is that we would replace either a lead or galvanized line to the first fixture fitting inside the home. Inside the home, that's up to the homeowner. That's how whatever their system is. And frankly, if you look at the true definition of ownership, the homeowner actually owns the line all the way to the curb stop. So this program is trying to not cause a undue financial burden of $5,000 or $6,000 on a homeowner, because we're trying to remove lead out of the system, which is a hazard and is known to be hazardous to for human consumption. And so what happens inside the house is up to the homeowner. If they have a whole galvanized system, I would recommend that they remove it, but that can be an expensive proposition for someone who's got an established home. This program is to take it to that first fitting inside. So actually our work inside the house is, inside the house or under the house is typically, a foot or two until we can hit that first connection. The vast majority of the work is the pipe being pulled through the yard and reconnected to the street.
However, most people's house, in our house, you would have to go all the way into our house and get to the basement and then a crawl space. And that is problematic. I understand why people don't want, and is this all going to be done contract? So the city, it's not going to be city employees even that go into the homes. It's going to be contractors that we hire. Is that correct?
Yes, so we're following the Denver program, which has been in place it's been underway, I believe, for 3 or 4 years now. And we are following their model, and their model with contractors are trained to do this kind of work and trained to interface with customers, is how we're going to mimic that same process. This just comes down to, this is the last piece of pipe before you get to someone's house. And because in the 40s and 50s, it was all lead. It's a function of our system because we have an older system. The only way to remove that the way to remove that and not basically dig up everyone's front yard is you put a spool of copper pipe in the basement. They pull that through the yard underground, and then they reconnect it to the water service line in the street. It's the most minimally invasive approach to replacing this line for customers, because we want to be conscious of the fact that this is an impact to customers. Ultimately, the customer ends up with a safer system because of it.
Well, the truth is, according to the legislation, if customers don't want you in their house, they're going to be forced to do it themselves. It's not a choice. And the fact that, what difference does it make if we change it at the meter and leave it beyond the meter up to the house if it's in the house? Because just hooking it up to that first stop in the house, how is that going to keep it from contaminating the city system any different than just hooking it up at the meter? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, the regulations don't allow us to do that. Because as soon as you disturb a lead service line, you spike lead contamination in the water. So in the home's water. So that's what the studies show. So the reason why they don't let us, replace just to the meter and just replace the city's portion and say, here, homeowner, you deal with your lead service line someday in the future you want, is because the regulations, EPA and CDBHE, don't allow us to segment that. If we're going to remove the line, we have to remove the whole line, which is actually good practice. And again, remember, this all comes out of the stuff that happened in Flint and other communities across the U.S. where lead caused, there was lead poisoning to many, many people, which is why this is such a high priority across the U.S. now, and why we're taking a serious proactive initiative to get it out of our system. It's for the health of our customer.
I actually agree with you. I actually believe that lead service lines should be removed, but it's problematic that it's infringing on the property rights of individuals.
Right. And so, so that's where you have two things. We are the water service provider, and we have to ensure that what we are providing is safe water. But if the property right gets in the way of us being able to do that, then we're in a catch-22 as it relates to ensuring safety of the water that we provide, but the property owner is not allowing us to provide that safety. So that's where, yes, this is not ideal, from a true property rights perspective, but it's also somewhat of a necessity of being connected to a citywide water system. So we're trying to do the better of the two issues,
Okay,
which
so
is the health. I'm sorry.
that brings up another question. So in the legislation, it also talks about other like springs or other situations that might be available in a property, that those also, I don't really remember exactly what it said, but like if you had a naturally occurring spring in your yard, you can't attach that to your house, or there's something in the legislation that's, impacting that as well.
I would assume that that's more, I would assume that that's tied to water rights. Because any developed home in the city of Englewood turned over their water rights at the time of development. And so there's very few, don't quote me on this, but I don't believe there are any single established water rights of properties in the city. We can verify that. There might be a residual one here or there. You can't connect to a naturally occurring spring because it's not your water.
Actually, it's kind of interesting. You should look on that, because I've talked to somebody who has grandfathered in because they've owned the property for decades, maybe into the last century.
There could be a handful of maybe some of the homesteader homes that were from, that are like 80 or 100 years old that may have this. I don't know this off the top of my head, but the vast majority of all the customers in the city of Englewood can't connect to a natural spring because it's not their water. It's not their water right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Without jumping in, I just want to know, are there other people that are wanting to jump in?
I had some questions about owner responsibilities and damages.
Anyone, and I couldn't see that anyway. Anyone else? I want to pause on a time check here for a moment. Is that it for hand raising at the moment? Because we have still two big issues. Peter, let me just check. Are we on what's our time frame for needing to do something?
This, I mean, I don't think it necessarily, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it necessarily hurts anything if we come back another month.
Yeah, I think that's fine with how we're planning out the construction this year. I think that'd be fine.
Let me have the other, I've got a suggestion I may make in a moment, but let me have the other issue put on the table. And I'm sorry, I couldn't tell from the small screen who was going next, but please go ahead.
Oh, it's me, Cammie.
Okay, Cammie, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. So I heard that, once a line is installed, a new line is installed, that the maintenance of that line becomes the owner's responsibility. My question is, as an owner, if I have a new line installed, it fails within a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever that number is, am I ultimately responsible for that if it's due to poor construction? And I just want to understand in the ordinance where responsibilities fall for, when we're talking about the maintenance down the road. There may be some construction guarantees or something that's in these contracts, but I need some reassurance that the customer, the owner, is going to be prepared or, protected, I think, from some of that. And then also, this certainly impacts me. My house was built in 1905. So what about damages to the property? We're talking about going in people's basements. We're talking about going into crawl spaces. We're talking about pulling lines out to the curb stop. What if there are damages? And how is that going to be remedied? I'm not sure that I saw that level of detail within the ordinance. So I think it's important that we understand how property owners are going to be protected if, if this happens on their property. And then my third thing, and sorry, I'll just kind of dump it all out here, but transfer of property. So say that I'm, a property owner and I say, no, you're not going to do this. You guys move on to another area, but then I decide I'm going to, sell my property, and then it becomes the other owner's responsibility, because I think I read that you kind of get one shot at it, right? You get one shot as an owner to say, yes, I'm going to be part of this whenever you're in that quadrant that's identified. If you miss that opportunity, somebody transfers the property, and now you have a new property owner that's responsible for replacing a line. So I think all my stuff has to do with protecting the owners and the property owners from, damages to their property. How are they going to be protected during the transfer of property? Those sorts of things. And then poorly installed lines. We know not all contractors do a great job.
So let me see if I can check these off.
Are they quick, Peter?
Yep, I'll check them off
If
pretty
not,
quick.
we can go to next.
Well, yeah, let me just propose this, because I think those are questions we can address the next meeting. I want to see if this may work. For Steve's point, Steve, you're asking to separate the meter issue from the direct service line issue. Peter, you are wanting to have them addressed at the same time. If with the board's consent, I'd like to bring those back, both motion, or break it into two motions, but we still address both motions at the next meeting. Is anyone objecting to that kind of bifurcated approach?
No,
Okay,
We
then
can definitely
let's,
do that.
all right, let's come back so that we can address that, allow the board to address Steve's point separately. To Rita's issue, I'm not sure what the alternatives are, but I'd love, just to further facilitate what council has to ultimately address, I'd love a little more discussion. I'm not hearing that the city has a lot of choice in this matter, but, Rita, if there is something we could do for the board and come back and kind of discuss next time, a little more A versus B approach, I'd welcome that. I just want to make sure we can leave tonight with some kind of vision for how we get there for that discussion next time. And then again, we can address Cammie's questions at that point as well. Do we have thoughts about how we can advance on the property right versus, water system
Chair, if I
balance?
may, I think we can, so we have the ability, if like I said, when I introduced this, when I introduced my comments, we have the ability, we think, if these last tests come through and we don't have a lead positive hit anytime in the near future, we have much more flexibility in terms of how we implement this. And so we could go through and we could replace all these lines. And then if we have, a dozen people who refuse to allow us access, we deal with those in the end. Or I think the thing to consider is the fact that we have funding now. We might not have funding in the future, which means that becomes a $10,000 hit to the homeowner because they don't want us in their basement. And so we're trying to weigh the overall benefit and how to do that best. I think we'll go back. I think we've heard enough of I think we got enough from the discussion here. We'll go back, we'll split it into two. We'll talk again about, how this could unfold and think about some of this discussion as we do that. And then we can bring it back next month.
I would.
Very quickly, Chair, I just have some brief comments on that topic. That was the second thing I wanted to contribute to.
Steve, yes, let me let you go next. Let me go ahead. I think Rita was going to jump in. I want to, since it started with her subject, and then I'll have you follow if that's okay.
It's
Rita,
related
was
to
that
her
you?
subject, but that's fine.
Okay.
So I agree. I appreciate that, Peter. And I actually, I think that 99% of the people are going to willingly do this. And if we could get around it that way, instead of putting legislation that puts the camel's nose under the tent, that's where my big concern is. It's not that I don't think we need to do this. I absolutely do think we need to do this. And the fact that you kind of saw that in the previous one, most people that, and there were a couple, I'm sure. That's really, that's all.
I think this new testing route that we've been doing in parallel, and the fact that those numbers are coming in so well, is allowing us that flexibility that I think the board is somewhat asking for here, which we didn't have, 2 weeks ago. So I think we do have some flexibility there that we can potentially incorporate into this.
Thank you.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, the issue of entry without the homeowner's consent still does give me some heartburn, but I think one of the things that could help me with that is to have a more structured approach to it in the code. So, 30 days notice, 45 days notice, 60 days notice, some level of notice to the homeowner. We intend to enter on this date in writing. Right now, as I read the code, it just says upon notice by the director or his designee. That means that someone from the water department could knock on my door tomorrow and say, we need to get into your crawl space. And I have no choice but to allow entry. And I don't agree with that at all. And I would never vote for that as a council member.
We can definitely do that.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with both Ms. Rita and Steve. Thank you so much, Peter.
So, I mean, Peter, even if if staff's recommendation is call it the Denver approach, but we can do a plan B that addresses these concerns, and then the board can make the decision whether they agree to go all the way to the Denver approach, call it, or we do something that's softened. I'd like to be well positioned for the board to do that, and even if council could then still be free to do something different, of course. But what is this body's recommendation to council? Good. I appreciate this. Let's try that next month. And then in the interim, certainly if there's additional thoughts to share or whatever to help facilitate that next meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Peter, and we can do that. I'm going to move us on in the.
We gotta take.
Go ahead.
Since this is already on the agenda and we've already entered debate on this, we'd recommend that at the very least you make a motion, or someone make a motion to continue this matter to the date certain, which would be the next meeting of the Water Shore Board.
Yeah. I'm open to that. How do I correct the mistake then that I didn't get the motion on the table in the first place? Just because it's debate?
Right. You can go ahead and see if there's any member of the board that is willing to make such a motion now in order to properly move it on.
So we can move to table it to the next, to the March meeting?
Yeah.
Right, the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Water Shore Board.
Yep, I'll second that.
All right, that was a motion. I heard the second. All in favor to defer to the table this till the next meeting, say aye. Aye.
Hi.
And I'm gonna grudgingly ask, any objections? Hearing none. Yes, thank you. May we, all right, good. Motion carries. We'll continue this at our March meeting. On the only significant issue next was item 8A, which could also be potentially meaty. Peter, remind me if there's a time crunch on that one.
No,
Okay.
we can punt that one too. And we had already planned to hold the March meeting kind of open from other action items. So if we need to move both of these to most of that agenda, it'll actually mean we had these paired as a study session topic. So I'd rather just remove them both or put them both to March and then we'll just pull it off the council study session and we'll reschedule that. I think that works. Unless, Sarah, did I misspeak there?
No, that's what we would intend to do is pull them off the study session for next week.
Okay. We'll do that well, and I don't need a motion for that. All right, if someone needs to squeeze in a board member's choice.
Chair, can I
It
just say,
sounds like we're good.
I do appreciate the conversation on the lead. It really does give us good direction. So thank you.
And I just wanted to finish by letting Cammie know that to welcome you, I'm ending this meeting an hour earlier than normal. So don't bank on it going so smoothly in the future. No, everyone, this is great. This is really robust. This is a really robust discussion, and thank you all for working through it. And we will continue it. And let's again, I'm kind of hoping we get into the decision next week. Will really be, or next month will be really kind of an interesting discussion between balancing the individual and the system needs. With that, I'm going to call us adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
5 items.
Since I've been on the board, it hasn't been that long.
Right.
One item.
Special, just for
I
me.
All the
apologize.
2 meetings, right?
I apologize. I actually was.
Oh, really?
It went over just a couple minutes.
And I gotta go to sustainability now.
All right.
So, and I'm missing that. All right, everyone, have a good evening.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I didn't say anything on time, so I didn't want to extend it. And I thought Denver's rule was when you sold the house,